Have you ever wanted to fix something so badly that you've broken that you would trade anything in the world to figure out how to undo the damage you've caused? When your affair is discovered in a relationship, the one thing that you remember for a long time, maybe you never will forget, is the pain, the reaction, the shock on your mate's face. All of the secrets that you've been keeping, all the lies, they've come out of the woodwork and they're on full display. And in that moment, if you know this, there's nowhere to crawl. And it's an understatement to say that for both the betrayed and wayward spouse, the world closes in around you. Up until discovery, if you've been the wayward spouse, you've most likely been living under kind of an illusion that no one's ever going to know about what I'm doing. So you don't really think about it, even though you're living actively day after day to make sure no one knows. Most waywards carry a false, really a naive arrogance that they're somehow going to be able to escape the harsh reality of the consequences of what they're doing. Friendships, after discovered, maybe are gone. Family members may be enraged. They know they're mad at you. Trust is incinerated. Maybe your jobs, your reputation may be ruined. Every lie you've told, every relationship that you've damaged, every mistake that you've made when discovered is now on front and center. It's in the spotlight. And this can add a weight to already a crushing feeling of guilt and regret of, what have I done? And most of you out there, if you have been caught in your affair, you're really, really seeing your shame for the first time. There's a really unique kind of shame that comes when you're caught in so many lies and this pattern of behavior, maybe that's been going on for months or years. You tell yourself things like, you must be weak. You're definitely a failure. You're completely untrustworthy. You've ruined everything. Your mate is in so much pain, they will never be okay. And the discovery, the longer it goes, there's a dark and looming feeling that everything in your life is going to be destroyed. And it might be beyond repair. Not only are you hearing the accusatory statements from your mate, but you may be asking yourself at times, how could I? What have I done? You might even hear your mate say, I don't know who you are anymore. And just maybe, if you're like me, you started to ask yourself the same question. I remember so much of my own fear and turmoil when my infidelity was discovered by my mate. But truthfully, as I look back on it now, none of the fear that I had of the judgment that others were going to give me compared to the contempt and the hatred that I felt towards myself. And here's the thing, in this really vicious cycle of my own pain, my loneliness, my shame, the hatred I had for what I'd done and myself only grew. It's a really, really dark place. And I know some of you out there, if you're not there already, you can remember where you were. You don't see a way out. And you do apparently find, as many of us have in recovery, that sometimes that idea, rock bottom, does have a basement. So you're in a place of complete desperation, and it's really unpleasant. And as much as you hate it and you fight it, once you begin to kind of let go and realize that I can't do anything else, this is ultimately the first step towards transformation. Because sometimes, even though none of us want to face it, the desperation you feel is actually what can push us into action when nothing else will. Like nothing else has worked, but desperation sometimes can get us there. There's one concept that I'm going to challenge that is the most important and is absolutely imperative, that if you're a wayward spouse, you're going to have to learn if you want to grow, if you want to heal, and if you want to get out of this thing. And what is that one thing? Well, today, looking back on many years of my own recovery, I'm going to say the most important thing you're going to have to learn is compassion. If you don't have it, I promise you're telling yourself right now, there's no way you deserve this. especially after what you've done. It's really, really easy to spiral into more of the self-hatred. The defensiveness, that's what it comes from, the self-hatred. And this is going to probably spur on further minimizing, further avoidance, and further lying. Those are the same behaviors that are ultimately going to keep you stuck because they're punitive. If you want to stop the cycle of beating yourself up and just living in shame, first of all, this is going to take a lot of work and a lot of time. Self-compassion, even though I'm saying it's going to get you there, it's not the one thing that's going to fix or even change what's happened. That doesn't equate to ownership. Honesty is part of that process. Accountability is very important, but it is going to be compassion what makes this whole process more bearable. If your self-critic is really speaking really loudly right now, compassion is going to sound like a really weak or pathetic excuse. But I'm going to say compassion is going to be the only way you're going to learn how to tolerate and titrate the pain you feel and the pain you've caused. And it's going to be what's going to allow you to face the shame of what you've done. If you remember, like me, if you had kids and they were little and they had to go get the liquid antibiotics because they couldn't swallow a pill, you would go to the pharmacy and the first thing they would ask is what kind of flavoring do they want so they could tolerate how nasty it tasted. Compassion can be like that. It's going to be the thing that's going to allow you to tolerate the gravity and weight of what we've done, because otherwise, if we kind of look at it front and center, it'll crush you. And how do you begin to even learn self-compassion? Well, maybe for each of us, we need to ask ourselves, how critical am I towards myself? How much pressure am I putting on myself to get this absolutely right? Do you expect perfectionism out of yourself? Maybe, that's something that your family put on you and you've been carrying most of your life. If we can begin to move from some of our own self-judgment we bring towards ourselves, that's when we can kind of look at ourselves and allow more space for curiosity. And for me, it meant a little more room for beginning to even understand some of the whys behind the what. And what got me to such a place of the perceived moral failure in the first place. I know right now some of you would never say to a friend or someone you cared about the same critical things that you say towards yourself inside your head. I used to tell myself a long time after my 20s that I was never going to be like my dad. It was just a pretty blanket statement. My dad, if you know, he's deceased now, but he struggled with addictions most of his life. I witnessed firsthand growing up what infidelity did to my own parents' marriage. And unconsciously, I didn't know it, but one of the things I did through the way I wanted to tolerate some of my own pain and disappointment was I vowed to never be like him. Now that he's been gone for almost a decade, here's what I realized. I never viewed what he had done or his life through a place of compassion. For a long time, all I did was I harshly judged the pain that he inflicted through his addictions. It wasn't until I was able to give myself some of the same compassion, which I desperately needed, that I was able to give myself some room to look at my past differently and even see my dad differently. I'm not making excuses for what he had done, but I definitely can see him with a lot more compassion than I once did. And as I like to say, even if you believe in the idea of heaven, one of the things I probably will do is I want to punch him in the face. And then I want to follow that with a pretty long hug. Compassion, here's what it is. It is going to mean that you're going to choose gentleness over punishment. Compassion is the thing that's going to separate maybe who we really are from this idea of what we think we should be or what we've had to be. I told myself, I could never be a person that would hurt anyone in my marriage. I ended up doing it, right? Because that's what I thought I had to be with ever looking at anything else. Compassion is ultimately going to be the antidote to shame and defensiveness. Your mate right now, they're likely in a lot of pain for a long time. The blow of the betrayal is something they didn't ask for, but they're going to have to deal with. And they are not going to be able to offer you much compassion because they most likely have their hands full working through, again, their own pain. This is why it's going to be imperative that you figure out how to self-generate compassion. And it is going to feel counterintuitive to do that. Your mate is going to need an abundance of patience, understanding, kindness, and compassion. But if you've ever heard the saying, you will not be able to offer water from a dry well. The same is true here. What you lack on the inside, you can't ever bring out and offer someone else. You will not be able to give your mate the compassion they so desperately need until we learn, right, to give it to ourselves. If you remember some of the old fables from Aesop, right, there was the famous one about a lion and a mouse. It was the one where there was this really, really mighty, big, giant lion, and he was sleeping. He was taking a nap. And while he was, a little tiny mouse accidentally was scampering across, and he ran across his nose, and it woke the lion up. The lion was enraged, and he caught the mouse quickly with his paw, and he intended to kill it. And the mouse begged for mercy. He said, please, please let me go. If you do, I promise one day I'll return the favor. The lion only mocked and laughed at the idea that something so small, so insignificant, could ever help him. But he decided, what would it hurt? I'll just let the mouse go. Many, many weeks later, that same lion found himself caught in a hunter's net. And as much as he tried, as strong as he was with his own will, he could not get out of the net. There was no way he could escape it. The lion was just infuriated again, roaring loudly, couldn't get out of the trap. And when he was in that same trap, the little mouse heard him. He heard those roars, and the mouse came running up to him. Without missing a beat, the mouse got to work, gnawed through the ropes, and he set the lion free. I only say that to say compassion is gonna seem like a really small and sometimes insignificant thing in the grand scheme of your healing. But in the end, it's what's gonna help to stop tearing yourself apart, to stop the endless shame spirals that keep making things worse than about you. Learning self-compassion is what helped me to stop tearing myself apart nonstop for what I'd done, which I can't change, by the way. If you ever hear the idea that forgiveness is letting go of the idea of a better past, meaning we cannot change what's in the rearview mirror. I had mistaken harshness for strength. And I did find that compassion is what ultimately allowed me the courage to keep going day after day, and the room just to start to breathe, to accept myself and my brokenness, and to develop some empathy for myself, and more importantly, for my mate. I hope you can find some of that today.